Good evening, everyone. I'd like to invite you all to take your seats and we'll get started. Hello, my name is Jasper Dent. I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Saskatoon. This event is being held on Treaty 6 territory. This is the land of the Cree, Dene, Soto, Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota, and homeland of the Métis. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the Saskatoon launch of The More We Dance Together, The Happier We'll Be by Nadia Prokopchuk. With guest speaker Shannon Gabrush joining us tonight. Thank you to both Nadia and Shannon for being here tonight and for working with us to create this event. Please note that this event is being live streamed. I've just got a camera up over there. It'll just be focused on the sort of stage portion here. We won't be filming the audience. However, it will pick up your cell phone if it rings during the event, so now would be a great time to turn that off or mute it. If you'd like to buy copies of any of Nadia's books, we have some up here on the signing table. We also have some on the desk by where you first walked in. And if you'd like to get your book signed, you're welcome to do that before you purchase it. We just ask that you please remember to stop by the cash desk on your way out. Now I'd like to introduce our author for the evening. Nadia Prokopchuk has worked as a bilingual K-12 classroom teacher, curriculum writer, provincial language consultant, and university instructor. She's an expert on language learning and multicultural education in Canada, and her latest writing endeavor into children's literature supports her belief that students need to see themselves, their cultures, languages, and their interests in school texts and library resources. Nadia also has enjoyed being a Ukrainian dancer and raising a family of dancers. Everyone, please welcome Nadia Prokopchuk.
Thank you very much, Jasper. So welcome everyone. It's great to see all of you. This is kind of like old home week for me. I see so many familiar faces from the past, present, and I hope to see you all in the future. So it's just wonderful that you came out on such a cold evening to support this book launch and to support McNally Robinson. So I'd just like to say a thank you to McNally Robinson for being so supportive of local authors such as myself. I'd especially like to thank Jasper for all of the help in putting this event together, and also your colleague Jeff for keeping my books in stock. So this is wonderful, and of course thank you for the electronic transmission of the event also. So hopefully you will be able to visit McNally Robinson often, and of course the Prairie Ink restaurant in the corner is just a lovely place. So now to the main event. This is the third booklet that is in this dance series. The other two were created during COVID time, and it's kind of like a memory in the distant past, but it wasn't all that long ago when we couldn't get together. So I'm very pleased that we're able to do this on site here today. So kids of all ages love Ukrainian dancing. This type of dance is very popular on the prairies, and many of you may not know that this trend began back in the 1950s. Although I wasn't a dancer at that time, I did begin in the 1970s when I was a teenager. And I have to tell you that mine is a very typical dance story for the prairies, for our province in particular. I was a rural kid. I grew up on a farm, and I went to a K-12 school. I took part in sports and track and field and softball and volleyball and curling and figure skating. And little fun fact, a lot of the fellas in our community also took part in figure skating because it helped with their hockey skills. And so, these are the things we did in rural Saskatchewan. But when our neighboring town, and the town was Vonda, that began they began a Ukrainian dance club in the mid-1970s, or the beginning of the 1970s, I guess. I was one of the first people from my home community of Prudhomme to sign up. And it was exciting, and I absolutely loved it. So after, those dance years in rural Saskatchewan, I came to the university in Saskatoon, and I started dancing with one of the large ensembles here in Saskatoon with Yevshan. And I'm just going to get my Yevshan colleagues to put their hands up, those who danced with me in Yevshan. There you go. So we have a few people in the room who have this same dance history that I do, although some of them grew up in Saskatoon, not in a rural area. But the typical, path was dancing in a rural community. Then you came into the city, you were attending university or SciEst, or you were working and you danced. And this is what you did in your 20s and even into your early 30s, and until you could dance no more. So this was something that contributed to my life, my career, everything that I did following those very important years. While I was a dancer, I also taught dancing in the rural areas. And that too was quite an experience, because you had to drive out in all kinds of weather to smaller communities and teach dancing and help dance clubs in rural communities to put together concerts and events, all of these things that glue our rural communities together. So it was all very exciting and part of the Saskatchewan experience. Dancing with a large dance group also gave me opportunities to travel, something that I probably wouldn't have been able to do had I not been with the dance club. So international travel was part of my experience, and that whole idea of performing with a group, working as a team, watching people on both sides of you and making sure you were creating a beautiful artistic dance performance on stage. There's no I in team, as the saying goes, and so those dance experiences really teach you how to be conscious and conscientious about what you're doing with others. So you can't just focus on yourself and think you're the star. You have to also dance in the back row sometimes, and that's a good thing. So here I am, proud of those very, I have fond memories of those past days. I'm probably showing this more for my grandkids, who probably wouldn't believe that I did this, but these were just very happy times for those of us who were in our dance ensemble. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that across the prairies, there are thousands of dancers, dance families, and grandparents who have a history of Ukrainian dance. And this is, I keep saying, it's like the best kept secret on the prairies, because so many people don't know that this is what so many children do. Currently in Saskatchewan, we have 46 dance schools, and I pulled that information from the UCC Saskatchewan website, so I'm quite sure it's accurate. But 46 dance schools, think about it. There might be 40 or 50 or 60 or more students in each dance school. Multiply that by 46, and this is only 1 year, one snapshot in time. Multiply that back to the 1950s, and you can see why I say thousands. These booklets are just an example of writing about what I know. And what I know is that this is happening on the prairies, and we should be proud of that. We pay a lot of attention to sports and other, activities, but I think we need to pay more attention to the arts and dance. We're now into the 6th and 7th generation of Ukrainian descendants in Canada, and there's still a great deal of interest in dancing, and of course, by extension, in all things Ukrainian. Is it nostalgia? Well, maybe for some, but I think for many prairie families, it's much more than nostalgia. It's part of a deeper search for identity, because we're living very far away from the land of our ancestors. So incorporating Ukrainian culture and traditions and language into our lifestyle unites us with those who came before us. Our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, many are buried here, but many are still, on the land that is across the ocean, that is Ukraine, that is now in terrible circumstances. So there are other markers of identity that we have as part of our extended communities that help us with this identity. We gather for special milestones, we prepare traditional foods, we practice our faith, and this identity is also expressed in music and songs and in dancing. So I think Ukrainian dance clubs became popular in rural communities because they offered so many families a sense of belonging, and not just to the local cultural community, but to a much bigger, broader global community of Ukrainians and their descendants in many other countries. So dancing has created lifelong friendships for so many of us in this room, and for those that we have come to know from other parts of the globe. And Ukrainian dancing really creates that network that quite literally has no borders. Finally, I think I want to mention this historical connection. Canada is a very young country. 1867 wasn't that long ago. And I certainly hope we have many more years in Canada to come. But Ukraine goes back 1,500 years ago. It's actually more than 1,500 years now. But this history began a long time ago, and I think we all feel it. We all feel this connection to something that is very, very old and well established, but it's shaped and molded who we are as Canadians. And so we want to keep that connection alive. So as I said, I come from a rural community, and I want to give rural communities a shout out here today, because they really are vibrant hubs of Ukrainian dancing. And they're kind of like feeder systems into the dance communities in the larger centers. So as I mentioned, I was a dancer in the 1970s, and my participation was a direct result of dancers from Saskatoon going to these rural communities to teach dancing. These instructors became young mentors for many of us. And we looked at them in awe and thought, wow, they're from the city and they've come out to teach us how to do all of these wonderful things and, have fun while we're on stage. And so these were formative experiences for so many young people, and they continue to today. And that's why our guest speaker tonight, Shannon, will talk about what's happening in the Ukrainian dance world right now. Excuse me, I'm just going to blow my nose. I'm struggling with a cold, and I don't want to pass it along to anybody. So I think the 1970s was just there was an explosion of Ukrainian dancing in rural areas. And so there was kind of an era of Ukrainian dance fever that began. And dance clubs were formed by parents, by extended families and community members. And these clubs were just great examples of parent volunteerism and fundraising. Parents and community volunteers met regularly to sew dance costumes, cross-stitch shirts and blouses, plan fundraising events, or just keep each other company while their children danced. Perhaps some of you in the room, no doubt, people in this room have fond memories of a Ukrainian malanka, which is a New Year's dance, or an obzhenki, a fall harvest festival event. And you experience the winning formula: food plus dancing plus music plus fun and some refreshments. Yeah. And this happened until the wee hours of the morning. All of these things happened thanks to a Ukrainian dance club who put on the event and had their children dance for you. So these were the kinds of things that pulled community members together. And honestly, it did not matter whether kids in these communities were of Ukrainian heritage or not. Kids just liked participating. In my home community, I mean, we have as many French Canadian kids participating as Ukrainian heritage kids and Hungarian kids and Polish kids. So they are all part of the mix. And that's one of the great things about dancing. You don't have to draw any kind of ethnic borders. I hope that the background, this little brief snippet, gives you some insights into why I chose to focus on the group dance experience. Following my first two booklets, which were about a little boy and a little girl and their dance dreams. This poem in this booklet and these illustrations capture the joy that is sparked in a room filled with music, kids, and dance teachers. There are some cultural references and some specific dance movements that are typical within a Ukrainian dance class, and I'm sure you'll recognize those as you leaf through the booklet. So in education circles, we often talk about place-based learning, and usually it's with reference to Indigenous students. Well, Ukrainian Canadian families can relate to this term, except we have two places where we have, strong affiliation. We have a foot in two cultural worlds. We have over a century of place-based experiences in Canada, but yet there's a very real and powerful connection to another land and another language with an even longer history, and that's Ukraine. So that also feels like home sometimes, even though we don't live there. I've also mentioned that this group dance experience is just an amazing brain and body workout for youngsters. And that's why I chose the particular illustration and the lines at the beginning of the booklet to show that dancing pulls kids away from toys and gadgets and games and things that they can become attached to. They need some physical outlets as well, and dancing does that for them. Okay, I have to play a snippet of this song because some of you may remember it, some of you may not. When I was writing the booklet, I always share a copy with my friend Serhiy Koryuk, sitting at the back. He is a choreographer and artistic director for Pavlichenko Folkloric Ensemble. And said he is always a good helper with the text and the dance movements. And so I talked about this particular song and the inspiration for the book. And he said, I don't think I've ever heard this song. So he's born in Ukraine. And that was just a reminder that that wasn't part of his childhood growing up. And I said, okay, said he, go and ask Nina. Go and ask your wife. She will sing it to you. So for those who don't know the song, this is what it sounds like. This is by Rafi.
The more we get together, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. Because your friends are my friends, and my friends are your friends. The more we get together, the happier we'll be.
So I think many of you in the room will know that song. There might be a couple of you who don't. So there we go. And the Ukrainian version is in the booklet as well. So when I was a teacher in the Ukrainian bilingual program in kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, in those early years, I created this Ukrainian adaptation of the song, and we used it in the gym, and we incorporated Ukrainian dance into the phys ed program. And so this is just an example of how two languages and cultures can be adapted to reflect our life in Canada. And so that's why both of those versions are at the back of the booklet. Now, a word about the illustrations. My illustrator, Volodymyr Povoroznik, lives in Ternopil, Ukraine, and has no dance background. No dance background. So how could I convey to him what I wanted to see on each page? Well, this is where Shannon comes in and the Rushnachok Folk Dance Ensemble or Folk Dance Association. I asked Shannon to allow me to come into her Rushnachok dance class during one of their Wednesday evening rehearsals. And I asked the dancers to create some of the formations that you see in the booklet. I took photos and a couple of video clips and I sent them to the illustrator so that he could actually see what happens in a typical dance class here in Canada. And so I think he's done a fantastic job with those illustrations, and I hope you'll agree. So now I'll get to a little book reading. If I can find my book. There we go. Booklets are very short. Put away your gadgets, books, and games, our parents say. Time for Ukrainian dance class. Quickly, don't delay. Our teachers demonstrate each step, speaking patiently. Place hands on your waist, then count 1, 2, 3. In pairs, we dance across the room like wind across the steppe. Keep the beat, pick up your feet. Please don't forget. We join hands in a circle. There's a smile on every face. Bihunets to the left, then right. Do this at a fast pace. Run into the circle's center, raising hands up to the sky. Step back to form the circle again. Give it another try. We hear the music, weave a wreath, and know just what to do. Forming a snake-like line, we march around the room. Can we practice Husachok and turns? Questions fill the air. Next week, say our teachers, there's no more time to spare. We take our final bow, and in our hearts we all agree. The more we dance together, the happier we'll be. And that's the end. Thank you. And on the very last page, as I said, I've included the words to The More We Dance Together. And I've also included the words to a traditional Ukrainian spring song, Viu Vinets, or Weave a Wreath. And that's that snake-like formation that I talked about. So this is the booklet. The 3 booklets that I've written are very short, but I hope they capture a little bit of the experience that children are having as they attend Ukrainian dance classes wherever they live. So all of these lovely experiences happened because of our dance instructors. They wouldn't happen otherwise. And even if we try to dance with our kids or grandkids in the room, it's not the same thing. They need to be in dance class with a dance instructor. Our dance instructors are just absolutely wonderful people. They take time out of their busy schedules. They spend hours on the road going to various communities, and they spend hours creating beautiful dance choreography for all the children that they teach. They worry about the costumes that they wear and make sure they have the right costumes for the right dances. They also learn about various regional dances and the differences in dance style. They need to have a lot of information in their mind as they are instructing students. They also have to be aware of music and what music matches particular dances, and creating the choreography to all of those different pieces of music for different costuming, for different regions and regional styles is no easy feat. And that's why I say we really need to give a huge round of applause to our instructors. And I say this collectively as a community of dancers, we really need to treat our instructors well, because without them, we would not have some of the wonderful mentors that we do for our young people, that we have for our young people today. So now, this is why I invited our dance instructor extraordinaire, Shannon Gabrush, to be our guest speaker this evening. When I say Shannon is committed, I mean she is totally committed to Ukrainian dancing for 6 days of the week. I think you take one day off, and that's today, right? And so she teaches Ukrainian dancing in various locations in Saskatchewan, and I think this is a great source of happiness for her, but I'll let her answer that question. Comment a little more about that. Shannon began dancing at the age of 5, and she studied dance in Lviv, Ukraine, and then became a dancer with the Pavlichenko Folkloric Ensemble in Saskatoon. She began teaching with the Rushnachok Ukrainian Dance Association, and then branched out to 10 other dance schools across the province. Do you think she spends summers at the lake? No, she teaches an intensive dance workshop during the summer. She doesn't have much downtime because she loves Ukrainian dancing. She's known for her artistry and creativity, and she's earned top choreographic awards at cultural festivals. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Shannon to the microphone and tell us a little bit about your life as a dance instructor.
Thank you, Nadia, very much for inviting me and having me come and be able to speak to everybody. I'm one of many instructors, as you mentioned, so I'm really, again, I'm just really thankful that you have such wonderful things to say, and I hope I can live up to those beautiful words. So I am here to tell you just basically a little bit about myself and my journey as a dancer and a dance teacher in Saskatchewan. So one main tidbit about me that often makes people question things is I have no Ukrainian ancestry. I was living in a small community, and like many rural communities, there was a Ukrainian dance group, and it was an activity in town. And my mother, who's right here, had 5 children, and having an activity in town was just the right thing for us. And so quite literally from when I was about 5 or 6 days old, I was already in the hall at Ukrainian dancing. My older siblings were dancing, and I was born right into it. And so it's always felt like home for me. I've never felt that I was not part of the community. I still have my own, ancestry, but I've always kind of, well, I felt so Ukrainian that I managed to marry myself a good Ukrainian man, and like,
That's right.
yeah. So I worked towards it, and it wasn't just me. I have 4 other siblings as well, and we all danced, until at least we graduated. And myself and my 2 brothers, we continued to dance with Pavlichenko Folkloric Ensemble with Sahikor Luke, who was a mentor to all of us. We continued to teach many rural communities around the province. And so my entire family's life has been embraced, like we've been embraced into the Ukrainian community and into Ukrainian dance. My mom would lead sewing workshops and go around the province and teach people how to make their hutzel vests or how to make belts. And actually, she's still doing that. She just did a workshop with my dance with Dance Moms in Regina on how to make circle skirts and pants. And so our journey as a family has been really wonderful because we have had Ukrainian dance. So I did start when I was quite young, and Nadia actually made me a beautiful kind of list of questions here to kind of delve into things. So it helps me focus on kind of on how we can talk about Ukrainian dance in our community. So I did start, and I don't have a lot of memories from when I was a young dancer. I have pictures and I can see the joy in what I was doing. I can see the blue velvet curtains in the Meacham Hall, where then I went on to teach many years later. But I can see that I loved it. And as we moved on and we danced into Prudhomme, they had a very large Ukrainian dance group, senior group. And so for my older siblings, finding a rural community with a large group with lots of boys and girls was the thing, right? And so everybody would they would go meet there, and then they would have these amazing years and they would graduate off, and then maybe the group would be small for a few years until they regrouped and regrew, and then all of a sudden you would have this, a rural group with 60 dancers, and then you might go down to 30. And so there was always those hills and valleys. When we moved to Saskatoon, we still drove back out to Prudhomme because they had this wonderful group and we were part of a really important community there. And that was a really special time for myself as a young dancer, and then also for my siblings with this large senior group. When we did move into Saskatoon, I was about 9 years old when I started with Rushnachuk. And I remember this community of friends. I remember that my mom was part of this community of sewers and planners and board members, and like they were always together planning these events. They were all downstairs pinching pierogies and getting ready for Malanka together while we were upstairs dancing. And so I have really fond memories of that community that we were part of. And then when I was about 12 years old, Rushnachuk has an apprentice program for young dancers that have an interest to help and teach dance. And so we still have that program. And that's how I started teaching. And so in that time, my dance teacher, Terry, she would allow me to kind of create, and she would give me guidance. And I learned some of the steps of how we can help the kids to understand things. And I was quite young, but she really helped me out. And by the time I was 15, actually, Rushnachuk gave me my own class. Well, it was probably pretty questionable, but I was partnered up with another wonderful dancer. And we worked together and we had our first class. And then following that, it just continued on. By the time I was 16, I had started to travel with my older brother. We would go to Meath Park, Saskatchewan. I would take a spare, my last class of the day, so we could drive the couple hours. And I started teaching. And the first time my dancers went on stage, my own class at that time, I remember that it was at a Malanka, and they got backwards and they started to cry. And I stood in the corner and I started to cry. And my brother, who was much more experienced than I was, he went and he got the kids together and he gathered them. And what had happened was I was always coaching them during class, and then I let them go on their own, and they didn't know what to do without me. So I learned a really big lesson that day. And that actually, like, that memory forges so much of how I teach my younger dancers now, and the trust that I try to give them as dancers to learn and be brave and explore that who you can follow, who can lead, who you can trust. There's just so many things. So those children ended up lining back up. I sat in the front. I told them what to do. They did a great job. The tears all stopped from all of us. And it was a very teachable moment. And so then in my time past that, I did teach many communities. I would drive out to Carrot River, Nipawin, Meath Park. I was in Meath Park for at least 15 years. I had to have a baby before they would let me leave. And it's these communities. And then Rushnachuk was always my staple in Saskatoon. And these communities all embraced me, and they allowed me to learn with them. And so I was now dancing with Pavlichenko Folkloric Ensemble, and I was then now learning from, sorry, Sahi, like the man. I'm learning from this person that is bringing this vast amount of knowledge to to dancers, but that are reaching out and branching out and becoming dance teachers. And so having that kind of education naturally brought into us, because there isn't a lot of education for Ukrainian dance teachers outside of who teaches you and what you learn in class. And so we're trying, I think everybody's trying to expand the education. And so dance teachers are learning more, but it is what you learn, that you take that and it carries on, and you go teach that and it carries on. So I started to learn a heck of a lot more. In my graduating year, I did go to Ukraine for the summer, and I did a dance intensive. And one of the questions you have here, and I really appreciated this, was how did I feel as a non-Ukrainian speaker? I don't speak Ukrainian. Probably my biggest regret in all these years that I've been trying to be Ukrainian was not learning the language. But I was embraced there too. There was always somebody that would help me. I was part of a large group of dancers that year. I was young, I was inexperienced, and I was there with a whole bunch of dancers from professional ensembles. So I was scared. And again, I learned a little bit again about myself that, oh, maybe I was the big dog in my group, where I was, but I'm not the big dog everywhere. And so that inspired me again to go, okay, what do I need to learn? What do I need to embrace? For me, it was ballet. I hadn't really done ballet previous to that. That wasn't a focus in Ukrainian folk dance classes that we had. And so then when I started with Pavlichenko, we started with ballet. And in Ukraine, I was learning from the ballet master from the ballet company in Lviv. So yeah, my first step into that was quite, again, eye-opening. And so I think a lot of my journey has been about these situations that taught me a lesson that I then decided to step forward and then take another lesson and step forward, and so on and so forth. I'm now in my 29th year. I know it's hard to believe, but I started very young, of teaching at Rishnachuk, and that's been my one consistent home. And I think of how I started with my first little group, and then I think of how I get to work with these dancers now, and how I believe my belief, not just mine, but my belief in that fact that children can do amazing things helps to allow them to do amazing things and be independent and trust themselves. And so when I'm working with other dance teachers, younger dance teachers and so on, that's what I try to do. Or when I'm working with our apprentices, because again, we have this apprentice program and we have dancers that have this desire to learn. And I will always say, sit on your hands and close your mouth. And you have to let these kids do it once on their own. You have to allow them to fail, because they'll figure it out after that. You have to give them a chance to show that they do know it. And so that experience has been really, really wonderful. And I feel proud and successful that I've had all of these experiences and all of these teachers and all of these times along the way to get to me to that point. So currently, just as a note about myself, I teach now just actually at Rishnachuk and then at Tavria and Regina. So I did rural groups for about 26, 27 years. I have 2 children now, so it's a little bit trickier. I thought I would cut back. But by cutting back, all I did was get 2 very busy dance groups that even though I technically teach 3 days a week, I teach 6 days a week. It's a constant. But what I see is a huge desire to learn. I see a desire to take on as much as they can. They want to try doing one region of dance. They want another one. They want to explore this. They want to explore movement and lyrical movement. They have this desire, and I can't say no to that, even though it's very busy. And it makes me really proud that I think in any topic, in any education, sport, anything, when you have kids that have desire to learn more, you can't help it but enjoy that. So currently I have about 160 dance students between my 2 schools. And really before I used to spend about 15 hours a week driving in my like late teens, sometimes in grade 12 when I started teaching, you know, I spent a lot of time. I'm now down to only about 5, sometimes 10, depending how many trips in a week I have to take to Regina. But I still do workshops across the province. This year I enjoyed going and working with Yorkton Dance Group. And then I headed into Manitoba and worked with a rural group there. I got to drive back in that really wonderful storm in November. Yeah, but I made it back, but didn't make it out to teach the next day. So we recall this day. We were stuck. So I also enjoy doing workshops and working with other children that I don't know and getting to see them learn something new and getting them and allowing them to kind of try something and ask questions. And so that is one of the funnest parts too. Plus, I don't have to clean the dances. I just get to see them on stage. And that's the hardest part sometimes. So I get out of a little bit of work. I do prepare as much original choreography as I can each year. I remember when I started teaching, we would go to competitions and I thought I taught 24 dances this year. And that was like, wow, right? Cassette tapes and cutting them and, you know, splicing things together and having my like big case of cassettes over my shoulders. Now I teach about 200 a year. So it's grown drastically, and finding music and finding ideas and trying to make everything different, but still fall within a regional pattern is tricky, but it's fun. I like this question, so I'm going to read it. The question goes back to the theme of the booklet and the happiness factor. What keeps students coming back year to year? Is it just dancing? And I don't believe that it is just dancing. I believe that it is, you spoke to a lot of it, community, pride, friendship, self-awareness, culture, you know, my little guy is going to dance right away, but he's nodding off at me talking here. So, and I think all of those things come into play. Again, I have lifelong friendships. My greatest friends are the people that I danced with. My children are friends with the children of those friends. And so we've grown together and it's such a special thing. And so when I think, why do kids keep coming back? I think it's for the joy of dance, but also the community and the experience they get to have and the pride they get to feel. I don't know if I should really say anything more. I hope that my experience and what I've expressed today kind of encompasses a little bit of what I do. I am by no means a knowledge holder like Sahi Korluk is. We look to him as Canadians. I want to say Canadian Ukrainians. I'll say Canadian fake Ukrainians. We look to him and we look to Ukrainians from Ukraine that have the education, that have come and that have brought their education and their knowledge here. We look to them, and Ukrainian dance well, I believe around the world, but I'm just going to talk the prairies here and in Saskatchewan is very vibrant because we've had knowledge come and teach us folk dance and teach us about folk dance and teach us about traditions and what songs mean and why we do things. And because of that, Ukrainian dance keeps growing and it just keeps getting more vibrant. And our access to more music and our access to YouTube helps with a little bit of education. You know, we can watch groups from around the world and we can see and we can hear music from lots of different artists. So the growth of what we're all doing and how we're expanding, I think is really wonderful. And I'm thankful to those of you that have brought that have made people like me have a lifelong passion. This is what I do as my full-time job, mom, Ukrainian dance teacher. It is what I've expanded into in teaching dance camps and trying to create, you know, kind of step-by-step syllabus of how to give technique and so on to dancers, and to support young dancers to want to be and to want to teach, and hopefully make fun times for the dancers I teach. I'm not looking right now, but maybe. Sometimes I get grumpy, occasionally, but we have fun too, right? So thank you again for having me. And I think the next part, we're going to invite William Gabrush, my son, and Kalina Tarasov. Come on up. And they're going to show you a Hootsel dance. And they're going to show you how much they love dancing. And that they're not at all shy, right? Okay.
Why they're being told to pick up their feet. It's easy to see why kids love Ukrainian dancing. It's fun. And even though it's hard and they have to think about their steps and their movements all the time, the music gets them going, and the joy of creating something beautiful on stage keeps them very happy. So it's something that we've learned to appreciate in our community, and thank goodness we have dance instructors such as Shannon who keep this joy and happiness going for our youth. They really need it. They really need more social experiences like this. And I'm very happy we have this as an outlet. And here, I couldn't resist. This was up right before the Malanka that we had in Saskatoon in January, the Rushnachuk Malanka. The kids were practicing, and at the end of a class, they took this photo. And so what the comment made by a parent was, what started as hugs for dance teachers turned into an excited group of kids at their last practice before Malanka. This is what it's all about. Kids getting to show their love of Ukrainian culture and dance together as friends. What a simple concept, but it makes such a huge impact. So I thought that was really a fitting way to kind of capture that happiness. And again, I just have to put my teacher hat on just for one final slide. I think we really need more multilingual and multicultural books like this in school libraries. Children are more engaged in reading when they see themselves in the books that they're reading. And we just don't have enough books on this particular topic in our school libraries. So I thought I need to do something about this. This is my contribution. One of my colleagues from the university, Dr. Bev Brenna, put it best when she said, children need access to stories that authentically represent their lived lives. Educators and parents who are selecting picture books for children should examine the illustrations as well as the words, seeking titles that are representative of the world we live in. So why not talk about what kids do after school hours and what makes them happy? This is what they should see in some of the books and materials that they're reading in our schools. So this brings the book launch portion to a close, and I have to say thank you to these very important people who helped to make this publication come to life. So my illustrator, of course, Volodymyr Povoroznik from Ternopil, Dr. Olena Huzar, who has been my great colleague and a Ukrainian language advisor for many, many years. She always checks over my language to make sure that my Canadian Ukrainian phrases also align with phrases used in Ukraine. Yuri Zavadsky, who's the publisher of these booklets from Ternopil, Shannon, of course. And if you look at the booklet and the dance teacher here, you can probably see her in that image. And Rushnachuk, of course, for allowing me to take photos and to use children as models. And Serhiy Korolyuk, who we thanked, I think Serhiy had to go because he's actually teaching dancing this evening. So he got away for a little while. And so Serhiy has been a great source of information and also just making sure we align the names of the dance steps and the movements. And then, of course, tonight I wanted to thank William and Kalena for coming and just showing us their dance talents. These kids, they're an example of what many other children are doing. And I have to say that when dance competitions roll around, when I say this is a brain workout, this is really a brain workout. These kids learn not one, not two, not three dances. Sometimes it's 5 and 6 and 8 and 10 dances, group dances, solos, duets, small group dances. They remember all of this choreography and the dance styles to these various regions. It is amazing. So kudos to them, and I hope more and more children participate in Ukrainian dancing. So thank you to all of you for coming to this evening's book launch. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to respond. You can come up to me afterwards, since it's almost 8 o'clock, and we can chat. And if you want me to sign a book, I'll be available to sign any of the books, as many books as you'd like. So thank you very much for coming this evening, and thank you once again to McNally Robinson for hosting this event. Thanks. A little bit of housekeeping here. We'll clean up and we'll move the